Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another Spotlight interview with Global Thought Leaders, an initiative by RightSource Global. I am Zishan Pathan, Director at RightSource Global and a council member of Global Thought Leaders. Along with me, I have my colleague, friend, and a council member of Global Thought Leaders, Heval Mehta, Chief Growth Officer at RSG. Global Thought Leaders is a platform for industry stalwarts to cross pollinate with their experiences, thoughts, ideas, and best practices to inspire each other and future leaders. Through Spotlight interviews, we strive to bring the community of eminent personalities together from across the globe. We collate the multi decadal learnings acquired by proliferating brains in a nutshell. We bring the expertise of various functions, roles, and sectors together on one platform to inspire future leaders. We have one such industry stalwart today on the spotlight with us, Sonali Sarker. Sonali is a renowned individual in her function. I would request Havel to introduce our today's eminent personality. Over to you, Havel.
Thank you so much, Zishan, and it's an honor to introduce Sonali. Sonali is a strategic leader with over 20 years of HR leadership experience across India, Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific, and Japan, and the US. She has led HR for organizations with a workforce of 3,500, as well as HR business partner team for a technology group globally. She has received awards for strategic workforce planning, driving organizational transformation, and building organizations with a strong people culture while ensuring organizational success in complex business environments. Seasoned in driving HR transformation through automation and change management. She has led Acquihires and been involved in mergers and acquisitions. We welcome Sonali on Spotlight today.
Thank you so much, Havel and Zishan. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great, Sonali. Sonali, you inspire people in your function and other functions as well, not only in your industry, but the other industries, right? And there is always an unheard story behind every successful people that we, speak to. So, what are the key highlights of your journey from the beginning of your career till the current role of Senior Director HR and Talent Acquisition at Automation Anywhere?
Thanks, Zishan. It's a very interesting question that you asked when you say highlights. And that kind of just makes you think and say, oh man, okay, what are some of them? Some that pop up to my mind, right, is about building organizations in India which have a high global business impact. And while they're having a high global business impact, also having very strong people-centric cultures where the employees know very clearly that the company actually cares for them. I've also driven another highlight that comes to my mind is about a couple of multi-year change management initiatives that I drove across the organization. This involved, driving and implementing, business readiness programs across different levels, be it in terms of, across leaders, across team members, across geographies within the global organization. This basically helped in driving the employer value proposition up. And the impact that the Indian part of the organization made to the larger global organization was humongous. And the impact was over many years and continues to be there despite me having left that organization some years ago. In fact, both of these, when I look back, something which is really close to my heart is the fact that in two of my prior companies that I had worked on when I decided to move on, the global CEOs of the company reached out to me and said, what can we do for you to stay back? I think that was a huge validation of the business impact that I had made in those organizations. And it is something that is very heartwarming even today when I look back. And I think the last one which comes to my mind is, we've automated in Automation Anywhere. We have bots or digital workers in HR. Now, what this has done is this has allowed my team to focus on the human side or the human part of the term human resources, right? While the bots focus on the operational process areas. And this basically meant that the HR team had to embrace change because it was a thought process of me as an individual doing it. And tomorrow there's a bot that's going to do it. And to be able to make the mental leap of, okay, what better work am I going to do? And I think the last one, which I had completely forgotten, which you talked of, was the Acquihire that I drove maybe a year plus ago. So these are some of the highlights that come to my mind based on what you asked.
So that was an amazing journey, Sonali, I must say that. So
Thank you.
you played a vital role in transforming the function itself, right? So what are the key changes you brought in your function to make it more efficient and effective?
Um, in today's world, right, I think bots or digital workers are here to stay. And they have played a huge role or are playing a huge role in the HR organization and my HR organization. Now, what has happened is with the bots doing a lot of the manual, the repetitive work, the HR team is having time to have those meaningful conversations, be it with the candidates who apply, be it with our managers, be it with our employees. And we actually have bots for the entire hire to retire cycle. And the reality is that data is one of our key currencies that we use today, right? And we're all sitting and pulling data, analyzing data, and looking at data. Now, bots have basically allowed us to be able to, they freed up time. So they've allowed us to be able to use, give us as humans to leverage and look at areas which require our human intellect or require our emotional, emotional quotient to connect with people. And this truly has, it's amazing. This has definitely driven a huge amount of, effectiveness in my team. Interestingly, we've also, our employees came back, in which I never thought of it. People have said, oh man, especially new people who join us, that's a pretty cool company that I'm joining because I've got a welcome letter from my bot, which is assigning me a buddy and connecting me. So I think those are some of the things that driving effectiveness, efficiencies within the HR world in my space that I can think of.
Great. Sonali, you also touched upon cultural aspect of organizations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially the question I'm going to ask would interest the millennials
Okay.
very much, right? So dealing with the millennial workforce has become a different ball game, as the younger generation prefers work-life balance and flexible schedules and telecommuting. So what are the principles you suggest for fluid task management with gig economy?
Great question, Disha, right? And the reality is that millennials do account for close to what? Half of the workforce globally. And their interests are wide and varied, right? And it's both within the organization and outside the organization. So I'm going to spend a little time on what the millennials look at before I look at what companies are doing or what strategies people can look at. And the reality is that the world has actually moved away from, a work-life balance to work-life integration. So we integrate work and our lives together. So people are taking care of their personal chores as well during a typical workday, but that does not mean that they're not getting their work done. And that's exactly what a millennial will do. Take care of all their interests while getting the work done as well. Now, what is happening is a number of organizations have these programs that they call people ambassador programs. Now, what are these programs? These are basically programs that allow people to work on large scale or initiatives, projects, programs that are outside of their own work, but they make a huge impact outside their organization. So their interests that they have, which are wider, typically a millennial would have, gets addressed by those, employee ambassador, people ambassador groups. There are companies which are also looking and which have reverse mentoring. So we've always heard leaders mentoring, people much more junior to them. Here is the reverse. Here it's somebody who is a digital native, knows how to be able to go back, work on the social media or different areas, going back and mentoring the leaders. And our leaders are now saying, oh, wow, this is something I never thought about it. So that's another strategy that companies are doing. Companies have or so person may be an engineer, really doesn't need to speak so much in public immediately, but has a huge desire to learn. So companies provide that. And, it's all about how do you get the whole self to work today. It's just not your work. So it's about your mental wellness, your physical wellness. And I think gone are the days when, companies would look at employees only from their work standpoint. And that is something which has made a huge difference. When
Great thoughts.
Thank you. When you look at the fluid economy, right, or fluid talent management, digitization has basically, it's enabled, and it's also quickened the acceptance of the gig economy and therefore fluid talent management that is related to the gig economy. Now, what is happening is you have people who want to work on different projects at the same time. And therefore, these projects can be across different companies. But if you want to do that, it can only be on a temporary basis. It cannot be on a permanent basis. And they want to take projects which are away from where they're physically located, would be maybe across the globe. So they live somewhere, work on some other projects, and it works for them because they're able to get to do so many things at the same time. Now, when you look from an organizational hat, right, organizations also want a fluid workforce. They would like to scale up because when they have a specific need, for example, maybe, for staffing, they suddenly want to increase their workforce, or they have certain specialized needs for a particular project, but they don't know what to do with that workforce later. It works for them. There are certain seasonal demands that happen, works for them. And they would like this additional workforce only at that point in time. So it's a beautiful win-win that happens between people who want to look as a gig worker and companies who want to have gig workers. But this temporary need serves both. But I think one of the things that organizations have to watch out for is what skills are they looking for, right? What is the time frame? How will they take care of their IP? Because once you've given them access to the system, how much of access do you give them to the system, right? How do you take care of your system security? What are the contracts? What are the legal modalities? And interestingly, though the person is a gig worker, the person is still a human, right? So you've got to ensure, how do I keep them engaged while they're working for this temporary basis? So I think these are some of the things that companies have to look at when they look at fluid workforce that's available or gig workers.
Great thoughts, Sonali.
Thank you.
So, Sonali, the organizations are undergoing rapid transformation, right? And for that matter, HR function itself is undergoing a rapid transformation. So how do you see it evolving in the near future, keeping in mind the latest development in artificial intelligence and machine learning? Especially, I've got to ask this question to you because you are from Automation Anywhere, right? So
right.
I must ask this question to you.
Absolutely, Zishan, absolutely. I think we were talking about transformation prior to COVID, right? In terms of transformations from an HR function standpoint, other function standpoint. And I think it went through a huge acceleration with the impact that COVID had on the entire global workforce. It brought the reality home because where people felt it wasn't relevant to them, now they started looking and saying, oh man, so people couldn't get to their offices globally at some point of time or the other, but their organizations had to function and function seamlessly. Nobody was going to say, oh, there's COVID, so, I'm sorry, I can't give you a paycheck, or I'm sorry, this won't happen. It's not acceptable, right? So bots or digital workers in HR is the only way forward, because what is happening is we have to, so when I look at, say, at Automation Anywhere, right, where are we leveraging bots? And I think that will give a sense of how other companies can look at bots in HR. And I'll come to the NLP space later. Now, what is happening is when I look at from an HR standpoint or in Automation Anywhere, we have bots who are doing a repetitive manual work. We have bots which are helping us in hiring, onboarding, in HR operations, all kinds of reporting that we need, in our learning and development function, in our compensation and benefits organized teams, because they go back and work with our broker to update data, right? People's, data around your medical insurance, various insurance that are there. We even had our critical talent 9-box grid, which is a very familiar tool, which a number of companies work. Even that, we had a bot to work on it to be able to help us. Of course, and the separation process. So really, we have bots everywhere from hire to retire. Now, what is happening here is, this is a game changer, because what is happening is we are having more time as the HR function, as HR people, to go back and talk to people, right? Talk to them and understand, how are things working? What are we seeing in terms of data that's coming up? Is that truly being felt by our people? Is there a gap? What are the insights, right? So you can have much better, meaningful conversations that otherwise would not be possible. And this is an absolute game changer. Now, the thing is that as employees, and I think this is critical because this has changed maybe in the past 5-7 years, as employees, we want our experience of interacting with our organization to be the same as we would interact with our external world. So for example, if I want some data, what do? I quickly go back and Google and say, oh, I've got this. Oh, I have a problem. What do? Let me go back and raise a customer complaint as well. Now that's my external world. I want as an employee to be able to replicate that internally. So I would like instant information, be able to see clarity that I want, and go ahead and say, whom do I reach out to, and tell me right away. And that's where bots will always help us in HR, right? NLP, which is typically your natural language processing, is another area which goes a long way in helping and understanding employee sentiment, right? It gives an insight into responses that people would have had in terms of, any surveys that you ran, any engagement scores. It gives you an understanding, a deeper level of insight, and also helps you understand what are the risks that are predicted that are going to come and hit us, which haven't happened. Are there some patterns that we can understand? And bots and NLP, the machine language they're talking of, especially I would say bots and NLP will become, functions, HR functions will not be able to exist without them. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. It's like, when the laptops came in, or the computers came in, people said, oh, why do I need a computer? We can't imagine a world without a computer, right? Every company has it. COVID has ensured everybody has to have a laptop, otherwise it's difficult. It's the same with bots and NLP. They're here to stay, and they're here to stay because they make us more effective, much better in what work we do. Hope that
wonderful
helps.
Insights.
Thank you.
Wonderful insights, Sonali. So, Sonali, though digital transformation or technologies are playing a vital role in transforming the organizations, there are other aspects as well, right? Which play a very vital role in transformation of an organization. So, what are the key people strategies which are helping organizations to promote diversity and inclusion, which is also an important aspect?
So true, Zishan. I think diversity and inclusion is all about giving people a level playing platform, right? It's providing everyone the same level of opportunities. And there are various things that one can do, but I think the key area to start with is in terms of educating leaders and all segment of employees as to how diversity and inclusion is critical and why is it important. A number of us have biases that we know that we can work on, but training on unconscious bias is critical because we all have biases and we're not even aware of it. But unconscious bias training helps you understand what are the blind spots that people have in terms of diversity and inclusion, or D&I. And there are various ways people define diversity and inclusion. But broad way to look at it would be it covers gender diversity, it covers a diversity of cultures, employing people with disabilities who can still do the work, but they have disabilities, supporting the LGBT community, saying, yes, you bring yourself to work, we really don't care anything beyond that. But the reality is that while we can talk of support, while we can talk of educating, etc., what is not measured can never be tracked, can never be improved. So it becomes critical that you put some measurement metrics behind it. You talk of in terms of when you're talking of measurement metrics, saying, okay, what is the percentage of, for example, if it's gender diversity, what is the percentage of women that we have across levels, right? It's just not saying an overall percentage of the workforce. It's in terms of this particular level, at leadership levels, what percentage of women do we have? For every hire that we do, can we ensure that there are a slate of good qualified women candidates? When you look at inclusion or diversity of cultures, as an organization, are we going back and celebrating festivals from across the entire country? Are we celebrating festivals across all religions? Because that again shows that diversity and inclusion, right? And at the same time, ensuring that there are meaningful developmental opportunities that are being provided to people. That is critical, because only then can people actually move up. And like I said, that's the only way they can provide a level playing platform to everybody. And it's about walking the talk, right? So if you live it, people will see it and people will follow it. And of course, you have to measure it.
Lovely, lovely. So
Thank you.
actually, something which I picked up from your conversation, that is
Uh-huh.
the concept of unconscious biases, right,
Yes.
and the blind spots, which is something which is interesting to me to explore furthermore, right? It
Uh-huh.
has got a deep meaning behind it. So definitely, that's a pick for the day for me, right?
Sure.
Well, that naturally brings me to another aspect of questions where our viewers are really very interested in knowing
Mhm,
about
mhm.
these things. So the aspiring future thought leaders would like to learn from the mistakes, right? So can you share some mistakes that future thought leaders must avoid aligning their goals better?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the common mistakes that people do is that they put HR in a bubble, right? And say, from an HR standpoint, these are certain things we've got to do. What is important to, and I would say it's critical, it's not just important, is that HR cannot be divorced from the business. So what that means is, as an HR professional, it is critical that we understand the business that we support, right? Unless we talk the same language, uh, we will not have the desired impact. So they need to understand that, yes, the business and HR needs to be tied at the hip. We've also got to look at, design thinking principles, right, to our programs. So what do I mean by that? I think when we look at any program, HR program, rather than saying, oh, wow, it sounds like a cool program, and we all are guilty of that, some of the questions that I think we should ask ourselves, right, is what business problem am I solving? What is the business impact of what I'm trying to do? How am I going to implement it? And what are some of the other areas that will have an impact on as I go down the process? Because these were not areas that I thought would get impacted, but they are. So to be able to plot all that down together and saying, what are the interconnects that I should watch out for? Because that was not what I intended to have an impact on at all in the first place. Being completely agile to say, because we all come down with the thought process saying we're going to do this. Now, as we go down the path, we may realize that this is not the right path. Maybe we've got to veer a little left. But to be able to agile and say, no, it's okay. If what business problem am I solving and what's the business impact of it means, instead of moving right, if I shift a little towards left, that makes sense to be agile to do that. And the last two that come to my mind is, how am I going to measure the success? Just by us in HR thinking it's successful is not going to be enough. I have to have metrics to be able to measure it, and I have to communicate about it, right, to others so people are aware. We have to be authentic leaders. If we are not authentic leaders, people can very clearly see through it that you are not saying what you are or not doing what you're saying. And so we have to be authentic leaders in sync with the business at all times. Um, and I think the last one that comes to our mind is We do not need to have answers for everything. We put ourselves under tremendous pressure saying, somebody's asked me a question. I have no idea what that is. Okay, should I say this? It's okay to say, I don't know. Maybe somebody else has a better answer. I think those are some of the mistakes that I would say we should all watch out for.
That's insightful, Sonali.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Sonali, we have been building this global thought leaders community for cross-pollination of knowledge.
Uh-huh.
What are your thoughts about this initiative?
I think that's a fabulous initiative because it provides people the opportunity to listen to other leaders, to be able to go through their, success story. They understand what are some of the pitfalls they should avoid. So it's like quickening. It's like quickening your learning curve. And in today's world, where everything is now, remote. One can have the ability to listen to somebody who's actually gone through the pains and rigors and quickly learn at a time when you want to do it. It's at your time. It's not where you're stuck, where I have to go at this point in time, otherwise I can't hear it. It's a fabulous initiative. Thank you for that.
Well,
I
I
think you
would.
guys are making a huge difference.
Fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
well, Sonali, I would really like to thank you for the fabulous answers that we've got from you today. And trust me, all the viewers will definitely learn something new. And yes, uh, our viewers continuously give us timely feedback as in that they really like these answers, they really like that kind of an answer. And yes, we always give them unique answers, right?
Uh-huh.
Something that I was really happy in this session and that's covered, which I would like to share it with all my viewers. We talk about diversity, we talk about
Mhm.
inclusion, and I'm
Mhm.
sure you will find something different in this conversation as well. Most of the conversation that we had with Sonali was around people, right? People engagement, the culture, right? So what I feel is that try and make your organization as a people-centric organization, because one thing that I strongly believe is that if a leader is successful, his team plays a very vital role behind it. So always, whenever there is any recognition that needs to be given to your team, address that in public, address amongst everyone. Pick for the day for me is today. Yes, ideally, everyone. And this, I would say, this last statement that when Sonali concluded her conversation was really meaningful, and it goes to everyone. It can be for your kid, it can be for anyone, it can be for one who's retired as well. You should not be, you should not have any kind of fear in asking things for, right? If you have slightest of doubt in your mind about anything, get it clarified by asking the question, right? And along with asking, what is really very important and parallel to it is learning. So learning and asking, these two go hand in hand, and it's really very important for each and every one for their career path. So we really thank Sonali for a fabulous session today, and I'm sure all our viewers and listeners will learn something new today, and that will definitely help them to grow up and build their career path towards succession. So thank you so much once again, Sonali, for the fabulous session.
Thank you so much, Havel and Zishan and Right Source Global. Thank you very much.